Welcome to a bonus episode of Jori Sports Stories. Today, I finally got the guts to address my Los Angeles Lakers. It's about the Lake Show today as we discuss the catastrophe that just ended, what the future holds for this team, what moves do I think they need to make, and what about old Bron? Today's bonus episode is a Lakers episode filled with passion, analysis, and more, so tune in, turn your volume up, and let's get it. And before I get into it, it was really hard for me to watch the series versus Denver. It really was. And I had to literally just calm myself down for like 2 days before I got all my stuff together. The things I wanted to ask and everything, and things I wanted to talk about. The Lakers will do that to you. They will play with your emotions. But without further ado, let's get it. Now, some of the biggest questions after the season. We just entered the offseason for the Lakers, so some of my biggest questions include, like, next season, how will they respond? Where do they need to improve at? Who stays, who goes? Will Bron retire? What really happened versus Denver? And I've heard some discourse about it, whether or not this season was a failure. You'll get my thoughts on that at the end. But next season, how will they respond? Okay, it depends on who's on the team, but I believe that they retain most of this roster. They should have that embarrassing feeling about getting swept. They should carry that all off season, knowing that the role players did not do their jobs in the way that they needed to. I believe that with Darvingham at least getting this ugly side of the playoffs out the way, it'll help him be a better coach. We'll talk about what happened in the series in a second, but how will they respond? I feel like they'll be back and they'll be better. I feel like depending on LeBron and his whole little retirement thing, even though I have a think piece about that as well. We'll get into that in just a few minutes. But if this team should be able to stay together. I don't know what they're going to do about Anthony Davis. I will go on record saying I do want to keep Anthony Davis as a Laker. As long as LeBron is there. Even though, again, LeBron is, quote unquote, contemplating retirement. He got to think about it. Even though, we'll get my opinions on that in just a second. But I honestly, unlike most Laker fans, don't think Lakers should dump AD. I don't. Because that's not your problem at this point. That's not one of your problems, other than he's on and off again offensively. But we'll get to that in just a second, because that's something we need to talk about as well. But I do not think AD was the sole problem, even though he's off and on. But, like I said, they'll respond, and maybe, speaking of AD, has AD ever been swept in the playoffs before, other than his time? If he has, let me know, but I don't think so. So, maybe this feeling of getting swept will actually kind of stick with Anthony Davis, and maybe it'll actually hit the switch. We've been trying to see what Anthony Davis is really made of for so long, right? Maybe this feeling this type of embarrassment will kind of sort of flip the switch in Anthony Davis. I know I'm asking for a lot here, but I'm not trying to give up on the man. Maybe this will flip his switch. And maybe in the playoffs next year, if we get to the playoffs next year, he'll play a little bit more consistently. Now, we're not going to go talk about that right now. But that's maybe, the biggest response for me would be a positive response from AD come next year. Truth be telling. But Yes. And some of the big improvements that need to be made is consistently shooting. Consistency shooting is definitely one thing that they need to improve at. Because what we saw in this last series is they cannot compete with video game type shooting. Even with Austin Reeves coming off the bench or starting and providing what he provides. Their shooting is off and on. And like I said, this might be sounding a little judgmental. Maybe I might be calling out people. But when you have D'Angelo Russell, who is notoriously hot and cold, and he goes cold at the worst times, and it's all on your 38-year-old veteran. Like, come on. And like in this series, you needed somebody consistently to offset LeBron. Like, if Bron will give you 30, somebody else needs to give you at least 20. It couldn't have just been him. And it was just him. That's why I'm like, LeBron had just swept. The rest of y'all got swept. And I'm proud of the way, like, we'll talk about the series in just a second. But there was moments in that series that just really, now that I think about it, I'm glad happened then, so it wouldn't happen like next year. Or maybe it wouldn't happen next year. But they need to shoot the ball better outside of LeBron. And Anthony Davis, I'm definitely talking to him right now. Because, like I said a few minutes ago, Anthony Davis, all playoffs this season, he's been off and on offensively. Right now, the way the West is starting to shape up, he can't do that. Period. If the Lakers are going to have to be are going to want to be successful in the future, he has to work on his consistency. I don't know if it's mental, I don't know if it's physical, but he needs to be more consistent. And the only reason why I'm not really harping on his offensive inconsistency this year is because he was consistent on defense. Like, defensively, he did everything I wanted him to do. Anthony Davis was definitely that this postseason when it came to defense. But this is not about that. This is about they need to shoot better. They definitely need to shoot better, especially coming from Anthony Davis. You need somebody who's more consistent than D'Angelo Russell. And I know he said what he said about him being a point guard or whatnot. I don't see any team trusting you to be a point guard to run a franchise consistently because you're so hot and cold. There was games you looked good and you dropped 33, and then there was games that you were just out there running cardio. So please tell me this. Where? And for that, he can go. I said I needed consistency of shooting. I don't need somebody as sketchy as D'Angelo Russell on my squad anymore. It was a good move when it made sense. But right now, looking towards the future, inconsistency is not needed. So unless they're going to work on that with him, I don't like it. But who stays, who goes? Now, there's been discourse about this all week, about whether or not there's going to be somebody who's outbidding the Lakers for Austin Reeves. Now, if it turns into a bidding war, let him go. Because I can't do it. A bidding war is literally it's a lose-lose situation. That's what I feel like a bidding war is. Like, because you're sticking your neck out for a bidding war on a player is like, he deserves his money, but sticking your neck out and everything else out, and then for somebody to go and pick the other person, you know what type of embarrassment that gives off? That's embarrassing. I don't need my organization being put in that situation. So if he wants a bidding war, he can find his bidding war somewhere else. So as long as there's no bidding war, I'm fine. But Give Austin Reeves his money. Keep Rui. D'Angelo, I'm on the fence with. Tristan gotta go, even though he did productive. He did more. I'll give him more credit than what he's due. He did what he was supposed to do, which was cheerlead and occasionally come in and do mop-up duty and assist Bron. But he gotta go. I don't need people on my bench who are just there to cheerlead. Like, the way... No. I say... Get rid of Tristan Thompson. Maybe keep D'Lo for another year. If he still shows streaky, cut him next year. I don't know. But it all depends on if LeBron's coming back for real. Because I don't see the way they've played this postseason any real reason to kind of start shopping pieces around. And now something I do see going around in the media a lot is Kyrie, the Lakers. Heck no. No. That, you're going to ask a 38 going on 39 LeBron, if he comes back, to deal with a very peculiar version of a very peculiar Kyrie Irving. Even though they have history together, they won a championship together. LeBron also has won multiple without Kyrie, but that's neither here nor there. We're not going to talk about LeBron's rings. I'm not going to get on the LeBron slander that I've been seeing. Actually, well, I might address that in a few minutes, but I don't want Kyrie on my team unless Luka coming with him and it's cheap. So therefore, no. Because us maintaining a Kyrie means we would give up some of those pieces we just traded to get, which would be stupid to me, if you ask me. I think for the most part that we can keep this roster together. We might need to add a better shooter. If we do get rid of D'Angelo Russell, we need to add somebody who's more consistent. There's some names out there. I have to pull up the list, but if we can get a shooter, maybe one or two, right? And then you combine that with LA's uncanny ability to attack the paint. You can't tell me that this Lakers team with a better shooter, with like a spot-up shooter, wouldn't have at least won. It might not have changed the trajectory of the series, but if they had somebody who could shoot a tad bit better than anybody that they had, just a little bit better, they would have won at least. This series wouldn't have been over this fast. This series may have went to 6. This series could have went to 7. But the Lakers couldn't match whatever video game numbers Jamal Murray and company were putting up. So that's why I'm like, the biggest thing we need going into this offseason is a consistent shooter. Maybe not even a 3-point shooter. Just somebody who you can trust to make your shots when it comes down to it and not go ice cold. And here's the big question. Something that we've all been trying to decipher. And it's will LeBron retire? Now, I'm not going to say he's not going to retire, right? But given the circumstances of him saying, I don't know if I'm going to retire or not, and why the reporter asked that question after a loss, just mind boggles me. Because, of course, you just got swept. Of course you're going to think, you're going to have some second thoughts. Human nature. Think about human nature before you ask dumb questions. So I don't feel like him answering that question, I don't think he really thought that through. In all honesty. Because he just said last season, but then he softened his stance on Bronny playing in the NBA or whatnot. He softened his stance on that. But ideally, I would like to believe that he would still like to play in the league when Bronny's in the league. granted, given how, like, if Bronny is good enough in this upcoming season, this season I will be paying attention to him in college basketball if he play. He could go one and done. Maybe he could give a farewell tour. I don't think LeBron James is going out without his farewell tour. I don't think so. I don't see that happening. I don't see him going out like this, coming off of a playoff loss sweeping. Let me rephrase that. I don't think he's going to retire fresh off of getting swept in the playoffs and sent packing. I don't think that's not how he's going to go out. If he's going to go out, he's going to go out on his own terms. So all this crap about LeBron James retiring, the reporter just asked that question right after he got swept out the playoffs. I don't think he thought that question thought that his answer pretty thorough. I don't think he thought his answer through. It was just a spur of moment type answer. Now, could he retire? Yes. Is he probably thinking about retirement? Yes. He's been doing it since I was like 2. So, yes, retirement is in his near future. We all need to brace for that. Now, as of right now, my stance on LeBron and retirement is I don't think he's going to retire, not off of this factor. And the LeBron slander got to stop. I will address that in just a second, but I got some more things I need to talk about. So what really happened versus Denver? Well, first things first, I want to say that Denver was literally the better team. They were number 1 in the rankings for the Western Conference for a reason. They were the better team. You can argue Jokic should have got that MVP. That's neither here or there. I'm not going to continue to have that discussion about why Jokic did not and why Embiid did. But Jokic was the better. Well, I'm not saying Jokic was the better player because I feel like Anthony Davis did kind of outplay him a little bit. But once Jamal Murray got going, it was a wrap because I didn't have the bigs. I didn't have that bubble Lakers team that were kind of big. I didn't have that team to stop them. And I didn't have consistency to try to outshoot them. Even though I don't think trying to outshoot a video game shooter is going to ever do you very, very well. But, yeah, so what really happened. One thing during the season, this series that I really wish would have happened is if they had to realize that Denver didn't really have much of a rim defense much earlier. Like, why was Rui Hachimura the only one that really recognized that Denver doesn't have much of a rim defense? When only one person on the team recognizes that, we have an issue. So, I feel like, yes, there were some coaching mistakes. I feel like, yes, the players didn't show up. LeBron showed up, especially in Game 4. I knew he was going to show up. I was praying for Anthony Davis to show up, but he did not do it. Rui showed up for the most part. AR-15 did his thing, but it wasn't enough. And what happened at the end of Game 4 was LeBron was tired because he had to carry that whole team, which was capable of carrying itself. For whatever reason, they did not carry themselves for a whole game. And it didn't even work. It was all for nothing. Because you couldn't stop Jamal Murray. And then other people got going. And I was like, oh, Lord. It's like y'all put their foot on their necks and you didn't keep it there. So, literally, I'm not going to make excuses for the Lakers. Denver was clearly the better team. They had the better pieces than I have. I'm not going to make excuses. I feel like the series could have went to 6 or 7. But given how poorly the role players played at some of the most key points in time, and some of the rotational issues I saw, some of the dumb, like, there was a point in this playoffs that you could tell that 2 teams had rookie head coaches. I promise you that. I promise you that. So I'm not really upset. I mean, yeah, I'm upset. I had to calm down. I'm upset that we lost the way that we lost. A sweep is hard to swallow. But when you're being completely real, my team, it wasn't ready to compete with Denver yet. They had looked really good, but they didn't have the minus Braun and AD and maybe a few other people, but they didn't have the gas to go a full game with Denver and come out on top. Clearly because we got swept. I'm gonna address backtrack because I got off track. So bottom line, what happened versus Denver was the better team and my role players just weren't enough to handle a shootout with Jamal Murray and company. Period, point blank. The next thing I've been seeing around Twitter, bro, is some Laker fans, not the ones with common sense, were like, this is a failure, an epic failure in epic proportions, and yada, 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 yada. I'm like, y'all got to chill out. Because if you look at where we started this season, right, 2-10, and look at where we ended up at. Arguably, if people had shown up, we could be going to the NBA finals, but we're not because we got swept. So I'm going to leave that out there. I'm going to let that be that. But we were a play-in team. We weren't even top 10 in nothing before the trade deadline. So for all you Lakers, for you pessimistic Laker fans crying about a failure of epic proportions and all of this other stuff, calm down, shut up, and think. We started 2-10. We were in the Western Conference Finals. This season was not a failure. And if you really think about it, if you look at the playoffs at all, you can see the way the season ended. There's a lot to build on. You might not say that for a lot of the sweeps, because this sweep was different. We fought each and every game. Correct? Even though I was just really hard on the role players. I really was. But we fought each and every game. And we had a chance to win. And we just weren't good enough. And I'm fine with that. It wasn't a 30-point, almost a 40-point blowout. It's not like we quit. This team is not going to quit. So for y'all to say that this season was a failure, it was not a failure. It actually went better than when it was supposed to go. It went way better than when it was supposed to go. We started 2-10. And we had been fighting to maintain 500 or to get to 500 most of the season. We were fighting to get to 500. Y'all are saying this is a failure. But this was not a failure at all. And it's not like we won we're not going to win a championship this year, obviously, but there's a lot to build on. Like, if you have, like with Anthony Davis, like through various points through the playoffs, you saw Anthony and Rui on the floor, and it just worked. You saw what this team could look like. You saw how good this team could be. Given a little more fine tuning. There is nothing in the way that the Lakers season ended other than the fact that it was a sweep the way it ended that says, oh, this season was a failure. This season was not a failure. And if you think it was a failure, you're wrong. I need you to take off the depression, it's hard when your team gets swept. I understand that. If we're going to, your favorite basketball team getting swept is literally equivalent to your favorite football team losing by 30. It rips losing by 30 in a playoff game. It rips your heart out. Or if you're a Cowboys fan, you know what getting swept feels like in terms of Cowboys playoffs. conundrums. They're constant playoff conundrums, but that's neither here or there. This is not Cowboys talk. This is Lakers talk. But I can compare that to this. It feels just like that. Even though, minus the it was our year and this year we could have did this. No, I don't feel like that. I feel like we just weren't good enough for Denver, in all honesty. But this season was not a failure. This season actually left you a lot to build with because we have some pieces. And we can fine tune the roster a little bit more. We could have a championship team within maybe a season or two. Who knows? I'm not trying to write checks that my team got to cash, but I see it in the future. Maybe because I got the Lakers blinders on, but I see it. It's not like we were the number 1 seed and we got kicked out of the first round of the playoffs. I might be throwing shade at another NBA team, but who knows? But it's not like we were the number 1 team that got knocked out of the playoffs in the first round. No, we were a playing team and we went all the way to the Western Conference Finals because our GM, this is another reason why I feel like the season wasn't a failure, because of the changes that the GM, the front office, and the coaching staff made. We got hot. And then we did not get hot. We got hot and then we got cold at the worst possible time. But at the same time, this was not a failure. If this was a failure, I feel like for this team to be a failure, we would have to still have Russell Westbrook on the team. And as much as people like to get flack about it, if we didn't have Russell Westbrook, we wouldn't have got Austin Reeves. We wouldn't have got Rui. We wouldn't have got what we got. In all honesty. So I'm thankful for that because he turned into some pieces. I'm thankful for the good things he did do as a Laker. The rest of that, I'm not going to hound on him. I'm not going to sit here and call him Westbrook. I'm not going to sit here and devalue that man any further than what the rest of y'all have done. But season wasn't a failure. All in all. Because what? We had some issues. We fixed the issues. Now we have to fine tune, and we'll be ready to compete in September, October, August, whenever preseason is. The Lakers won't be getting swept like that again. I feel like with this group, feeling that embarrassing feeling of being swept, because I bet you it's embarrassing because you didn't even win a game and you're going home. You're going home on your own court. So I know that they're embarrassed. I know that, and I know that feeling is going to stick. I just feel like it'll stick in a good way. And though that feeling that they feel this year, it'll leak into next year. And they'll have more experience come playoff time next year. This type of crap won't happen. Y'all saying it's a failure. I see it as lessons. You crybabies are seeing it, the Lakers are a failure. And then it's stupid because it's not a failure. It's more like we just learned a really valuable lesson right now. We're not ready yet. We still have some things to work on. But if in free agency and during the offseason we address this stuff, who knows where we'll be next year? That's the way I look at it. Not like a crybaby loser. Like, come on. Toughen up. And before I get out of here, I'm going to address the blatant LeBron slander. Y'all know. Because this is not... some people are doing it just to troll. And some people are doing it because they genuinely feel it. But I'm going to look up some facts here. Because people are now getting on LeBron about being swept. And I believe Michael Jordan got swept like once. Actually, Michael Jordan was swept twice in his playoffs, both by Larry Bird's Boston Celtics, 1986, 1987. That's before the 6. But That's before the 6 rings, but he got swept twice in the playoffs. How many times before we start with Kobe? I love Kobe. I don't know where I feel like in my personal rankings, I know I'm going to catch some flack for this. Because I did not see Michael Jordan play. I was not old enough to see Michael Jordan. I'm not old enough to see Michael Jordan play. I was born right as LeBron James was coming out of high school. I was born in 2001. So before anybody makes me try to catch flack for anything, and the way I look at things, correct me if I'm wrong. The way I look at the GOAT argument, and it's a little bit different than how most people view this argument. They just go by rings. I don't go by rings. Rings mean nothing in a team championship. Because there's many variables that go into somebody getting the ring. Even though, yes, Michael Jordan has 6 of them, and he was arguably one of the best basketball players we've ever seen. I don't care about none of that. So, when I say this and you guys get upset, just know I don't care. So I feel like it's Bron, Jordan, and Kobe as the 3. That's the top 3, correct? And I did get to watch Kobe. I'm a Laker fan. I watched Kobe when I was little, all the way up until he retired. My dog named Kobe. He's such the most handsome man ever. But that's neither here or there. But Kobe's been swept like 3 times. 1998, 1999, and 2011. So I'm pulling that up just to say, don't try to diminish that man's greatness because he don't have as many rings as MJ, and he got swept this year in the playoffs. How many times let me find out. Hold on. Hold on 1 second. First of all, yeah. So, Michael Jordan has 2 sweeps in the playoffs. Kobe got 3, and LeBron now has 2. What are y'all talking about? The good old broomstick trick happens to the greatest. So, y'all can't use that to diminish him. The only thing y'all could use is the lack of rings, and he got 4 and 6. But again, that's 4 championships. A championship team, albeit in basketball, it's easier for individuals to shine. It's still a team sport. In all of Michael Jordan's 6 rings, you could argue he had a key player. Scottie Pippen, Steve Kerr, yada yada. And when you think about LeBron, he had Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving. So it's not just on one person. So y'all over here talking about rings and stuff like that, like it's not a team sport. The rings thing is clearly invalid. And you two, y'all are so busy comparing LeBron and MJ. You're comparing 2 completely different players. You could compare LeBron to somebody like Magic. And you could compare Jordan to Kobe. Those are the 2 comparisons I get if we're comparing players. I don't see why y'all are comparing LeBron to MJ. Even though both of them are arguably one of the best players we've ever seen. So it's like, y'all are trying to discredit this man's success for being swept in the playoffs. When some of the other greats get swept. In all honesty, did Shaq get swept? I believe he did. If Kobe got swept like 3 times, I believe he was there for at least one of them. So, y'all trolling or you're tripping, or you just have so much LeBron hate and this Laker hate, right? That you just formulate stuff that just sounds right in your head, but anybody with some sense could just poke holes in it. Just enjoy what we're seeing with LeBron James. Because one day in maybe the near future, we're not going to be able to see it anymore. And I feel like the league will really go to crap. Because from what I'm seeing with these babies coming out that are my age, and we got some talent, but once these older people, these older veterans really start retiring, this league is cooked, period. So all the Bron hate can go. I mean, I understand if you genuinely just don't like the man. But to sit here and try to diminish him because he got swept, when all three of y'all, when all of our favorites then got swept multiple times in the playoffs, is stupid. And it's invalid. It makes your argument null and void. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Yeah, y'all know the deal. And because this is a bonus episode, I want to thank you guys for listening to this bonus edition of Jori's 4 Stories. As always, I'm your host, Jori, and if you enjoyed today's Lakers discourse, feel free to share the podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's share the channel. Let's grow the channel. And I'll see you Saturday for a brand new edition of Jori's 4 Stories. Thanks again, and I'll see y'all on Saturday.